The moment I discovered my wife's infidelity felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath my feet. It was a Wednesday evening, a day like any other, and I had just returned home from work, ready to unwind. The apartment was quiet, too quiet, which should have been my first clue. I dropped my bag by the door and called out for her, but only silence answered back. I found her in our bedroom, her phone clutched tightly in her hand, a guilty look plastered across her face. It wasn't the look of someone who had just been caught in a small lie. It was the look of someone who had been caught red-handed. My heart raced as I stepped closer, and that's when I saw the message on her screen, a picture of her and a man laughing together, eyes sparkling with a familiarity that pierced through my gut. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. She hesitated, and in that moment I felt the walls closing in. It's It's Kyle," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The name hit me like a punch to the stomach. Kyle, my ex-wife's new husband. The man who had swooped in after my marriage had crumbled, the man who had taken my place in a life I once cherished. The betrayal washed over me in waves. Anger surged, but beneath it lay a deep, gnawing pain. How could she do this to me? I had thought we were happy, that we were building a future together. The image of her with Kyle twisted in my mind. I had never particularly liked him. He was charming, successful, and everything I had once aspired to be. But now he was the face of my wife's betrayal, the man who had stolen her heart while I was oblivious to the signs. Why? I managed to choke out the word, heavy with despair. She looked away, her eyes darting around the room, avoiding my gaze. "I didn't mean for it to happen, it just did." "Just did?" I echoed, incredulous. "You didn't think about me, about us?" Her silence was deafening. In that moment, I felt the weight of our entire relationship crashing down around us. I had given her my trust, my love, and she had thrown it away for a man who was supposed to be an acquaintance. A man who had once been part of my past, now part of my present in the most painful way imaginable. As my heart raced, I could feel the anger boiling within me. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to make her feel the hurt she had caused me. But beneath that anger there was something else, a flicker of determination. I would not let this define me. I would not be the victim in this story. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I need time to think," I said, turning on my heel and walking out of the room. I needed to clear my head, to process the betrayal that had just shattered my world. I stepped out onto the balcony, the cool night air hitting my face, grounding me. As I stood there, I realized that this was not just about her betrayal. It was about me, too. I had allowed myself to become complacent, to take our relationship for granted. I needed to reclaim my life, to show her that I could be better, stronger, and happier without her. The next few weeks would be tough, no doubt. I had to navigate the emotional fallout of her betrayal while figuring out how to rebuild my life from the ashes of our marriage. But I felt a flicker of hope within me. I would rise from this, stronger than ever. As I sat on my balcony that night, the city lights twinkling like stars in the distance, I couldn't help but reflect on my life with her. It felt surreal to think about the years we had spent together, the dreams we had built, and the laughter that had once filled our home. But in the wake of her betrayal, those memories began to warp into something unrecognizable. We met in college, both young and naive, filled with dreams and ambitions. I still remember the first time I saw her, sitting in the campus cafe, her laughter ringing out like music. We bonded over shared interests, a love for indie films, a penchant for travel, and an unwavering belief in the power of love. We were inseparable, and when I proposed to her 3 years later, it felt like the culmination of all our hopes. But as the years went by, life had a way of chipping away at our connection. I buried myself in my job, striving for promotions that never seemed to come. The long hours and stress began to take their toll. Meanwhile, she had started her own career, one that took off while I struggled to find my footing. I remember the nights when she would come home, exhilarated, sharing stories of her successes, while I sat in silence, feeling like a shadow of the man I once was. I had always admired her ambition, but somewhere along the way, I lost sight of my own. I became complacent, content to let her shine while I faded into the background. I thought that if I supported her dreams, everything would balance out. but I failed to realize that I was neglecting my own needs, my own growth. Looking back, there were signs that I had chosen to ignore. The late nights at work, the sudden phone calls she would take in another room, the way she seemed to pull away emotionally. I had chalked it all up to stress, to the pressures of adult life. I wanted to believe that our love was strong enough to weather any storm, but I was wrong. The betrayal stung. More than just the act itself, it was the culmination of all the moments I had overlooked, the cracks in our relationship that I had failed to address. I felt a wave of anger wash over me again, this time directed at myself. How could I have let things get so far? I had been so focused on supporting her that I had neglected to nurture my own spirit. But as I continued to reflect, something shifted within me. This wasn't just about her betrayal, it was about my journey, my growth. I realized that I could use this experience as a catalyst for change. I didn't have to remain the man who had allowed himself to be overshadowed. I could reclaim my identity and write a new chapter in my life. The next day, I made a decision. I would take a step back and assess my life, my choices, and my aspirations. I wanted to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. I began to make a list of things I wanted to do, things that would help me grow and evolve. I wanted to invest in myself, to take control of my destiny. I started with the basics. Hitting the gym. I had let my physical health decline during the years of neglect. I was tired of feeling weak and defeated. I signed up for a membership and committed to a workout routine. The first day was brutal, but I pushed through the pain. Each drop of sweat felt like a release, a cleansing of the emotional turmoil that had consumed me. Next, I revisited my career. I had always wanted to write, to pursue a passion that had been buried beneath the weight of obligation. I enrolled in a creative writing class, a chance to reconnect with my dreams. It felt liberating to express myself, to let my thoughts flow onto the page without fear of judgment. And then there were the social aspects of my life. I reached out to old friends, people I had lost touch with over the years. I attended gatherings, made new connections, and slowly began to rediscover the joy of companionship. I was determined to surround myself with positive influences, people who lifted me up instead of dragging me down. With each passing day, I felt a shift within me. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was no longer all-consuming. I was learning to channel it into something productive, something that would help me reclaim my sense of self. As I looked in the mirror, I saw a man who was beginning to emerge from the shadows of betrayal. I was ready to embrace the challenge ahead, to show my wife that I could rise above this. I would not let her infidelity define me. I was ready to move forward, to build a life that was mine alone. The confrontation loomed over me like a storm cloud, and I knew it was only a matter of time before I had to face my wife again. I had spent days contemplating how to approach her, what words to use, and how to convey the tempest of emotions swirling within me. I wanted to express my hurt, but also my resolve to move on. The evening came, and I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, my hands clenched into fists, the tension palpable in the air. I could hear her moving around the apartment, the clatter of dishes and the faint sound of the television in the background. I felt sick to my stomach, the anticipation gnawing at me. Finally, she walked in, her expression a mix of uncertainty and guilt. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Okay," she replied, her eyes darting away from mine, avoiding the confrontation. "Sit down," I instructed, my tone more authoritative than I intended. She obliged, taking a seat across from me, her body language tense and closed off. I looked at her, searching for the right words. "I can't believe you would do this to me," I began, my voice trembling with emotion. "With Kyle of all people, do you have any idea how that feels?" She opened her mouth to respond, but I raised my hand to silence her. "No, let me finish. You've betrayed my trust in the most profound way. I thought we were building a life together, and you threw it all away for a man who was supposed to be a friend." Her eyes widened, and I could see the guilt washing over her features. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then how was it supposed to happen?" I shot back, my anger flaring. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I wouldn't care? I didn't want to hurt you, she said, tears welling in her eyes. It just happened. I was confused and Kyle was there for me when you were. The accusation hung in the air. When I was working my ass off to provide for us. I was trying to support your dreams while I let mine slip away. You could have talked to me. We could have worked through it. I didn't know how, she admitted, her voice cracking. I felt so alone, and then Kyle, he listened to me. He understood what I was going through. I shook my head, disbelief coursing through me. So you thought cheating was the answer, you thought that would fix things. I'm not saying it was right, she replied, her voice rising in frustration. But you have to understand, I felt neglected. I felt like I was losing you. Losing me, I echoed, incredulous. You lost me the moment you chose to sleep with my ex-wife's husband. This isn't about me being absent, it's about you making a choice. You made a choice to betray me. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our words hanging heavy in the air. I could feel my heart racing, the anger and hurt battling for dominance. I wanted to lash out to make her feel the pain she had caused me, but deep down I knew that wouldn't help. I can't keep doing this, I finally said, my voice softer now but still firm. I need space. I need to figure out what I want, what I need. You've shattered my trust and I don't know if I can ever get it back. Her eyes filled with tears and I could see the regret etched on her face. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I never meant to hurt you. Sorry isn't enough, I replied, my heart heavy. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I need to take care of myself now. With that, I stood up and walked away, leaving her sitting there, tears streaming down her cheeks. As I stepped out onto the balcony again, I felt a sense of relief mixed with anguish. I had confronted her, but the pain was still fresh, the wound still open. In that moment, I realized that I was no longer the man who would accept betrayal without a fight. I was ready to reclaim my life, to take control of my future, and to show her that I would rise from this stronger than ever. The confrontation had been necessary, but it was just the beginning. I had a long road ahead, one filled with healing and self-discovery. I had to focus on myself, on upgrading my life and leaving the past behind. The days following the confrontation were filled with a mix of anger, sadness, and a newfound determination. I had told my wife that I needed space, but what I truly needed was a complete overhaul of my life. I was done being complacent. I was ready to embrace the challenge of self-improvement. The first step was physical. I had let my health deteriorate over the years, and it was time to reclaim my body. I started hitting the gym every morning, pushing myself harder than I had in years. The first week was brutal. Every muscle in my body screamed in protest, but with each drop of sweat I felt a sense of release. I was shedding the weight of betrayal, both physically and emotionally. I hired a personal trainer named Mark, a no-nonsense guy who pushed me to my limits. You've got to want this, he told me during our first session. It's not just about getting fit, it's about building a new you. His words resonated with me, and I found myself craving that transformation. I wanted to feel strong again, both inside and out. As the weeks went by, my body began to change. I lost weight, gained muscle, and started to feel more energetic. I had forgotten what it felt like to be confident in my own skin. I began to take pride in the progress I was making. Every time I caught a glimpse of my reflection, I felt a surge of empowerment. I was no longer the man who sat in the shadows. I was reclaiming my identity. But the transformation didn't stop there. I realized that I needed to invest in my career as well. I had always dreamed of being a writer, but my job had consumed me, leaving little room for my passions. I decided to take a leap and enroll in a creative writing workshop. It felt liberating to put pen to paper again, to express my thoughts and emotions through storytelling. I found a community of like-minded individuals who encouraged me to explore my creativity. The workshop reignited a spark within me that I thought had long extinguished. I poured my heart into my writing, using it as an outlet for the pain and anger I had been holding onto. Each story I wrote was a cathartic release, a way to process my experiences and channel my emotions into something productive. As I grew more confident in my writing, I took steps to advance my career. I began submitting pieces to local publications, sharing my work with the world. The thrill of seeing my name in print was exhilarating. It felt like I was finally taking control of my narrative, crafting my own story instead of letting my wife dictate the terms of my life. Socially, I also began to expand my horizons. I reached out to friends I hadn't seen in years, reconnecting with people who had always believed in me. We went out for drinks, attended events, and shared laughter that felt foreign but refreshing. I started to embrace the idea of being single again, of rediscovering who I was outside of my marriage. One night, while out with friends, I met Lisa, a vibrant woman with a passion for adventure. We hit it off immediately, sharing stories and laughter over drinks. There was an undeniable chemistry, and for the first time in months I felt a spark of excitement. It was exhilarating to flirt, to feel desired again. We exchanged numbers, and I felt a flutter of hope. Perhaps there was life after betrayal. As I continued to focus on my transformation, I made a conscious effort to document my journey. I started a blog to share my experiences, detailing the ups and downs of rebuilding my life. I wanted to inspire others who might be going through similar struggles. The process of writing about my journey became therapeutic, and I received messages of encouragement from readers who resonated with my story. With each passing day, I felt more like the person I had once been, confident, ambitious, and unapologetically myself. I was no longer defined by my wife's betrayal. I was redefining my identity on my own terms. But I also knew that I wanted her to see the changes I was making. I wanted her to understand that I was moving on, that I was rising from the ashes of our marriage stronger than ever. I didn't want revenge in the traditional sense. I wanted to show her that I could be better without her. As I continued to transform my life, I began to think of ways to subtly rub my progress in her face. I wanted her to know that I was thriving, that I was capable of greatness without her. It wasn't about hurting her. It was about reclaiming my power and proving to myself that I was worthy of love and success. I would show her that I had upgraded my life, that I was no longer the man she had betrayed. The journey was just beginning, but I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As I settled into my new routine, I began to think about how I could subtly showcase my transformation to my wife. I didn't want to engage in petty revenge. I wanted to demonstrate my growth, to show her that I was better off without her. I wanted her to see the man I had become, a man who thrived on his own terms. One of the first steps I took was to revamp my social media presence. I had always kept a low profile online, sharing mundane updates and photos, but now I decided to use it as a platform to celebrate my journey. I started posting regularly about my workouts, my writing achievements, and the new friendships I was cultivating. Each post was carefully curated to reflect my newfound confidence, showcasing the vibrant life I was building. I remember the first time I posted a picture of myself at the gym, flexing my newly toned arms. The caption read, "Embracing the journey of self-discovery, one rep at a time." I could almost hear my wife's thoughts as she scrolled through my feed. Would she feel regret? Would she realize what she had lost? I didn't care. What mattered was that I was proud of myself and I wanted the world to see it. As the weeks passed, I continued to share snippets of my life. I posted photos from my writing workshop, capturing moments of laughter and creativity with my newfound friends. I wanted her to see that I was thriving, that I was surrounded by people who appreciated me for who I was. Each post was a testament to my resilience, a reminder that I was moving forward. I also started attending local events and networking sessions related to my writing. I wanted to immerse myself in the literary community, to surround myself with people who shared my passions. At one such event, I ran into Kyle, the very man who had been at the center of my wife's betrayal. I could feel the tension in the air as we exchanged pleasantries. He had no idea about the whirlwind of emotions and changes happening in my life. "Great to see you, man," Kyle said, his smile disarming yet irritating. "I heard you're writing again. That's awesome." "Thanks," I replied, keeping my composure, just trying to make the most of my time these days. I could sense the underlying competitiveness, the unspoken acknowledgement that we were both vying for success. I wanted him to know that I was moving on, that I was not defined by my past. After a few months, my life felt drastically different. I was no longer the man who had been consumed by heartbreak. I was a man on a mission. I decided to host a small gathering at my apartment, inviting friends from my writing workshop and some old friends who had re-entered my life. I wanted to create an atmosphere of positivity and celebration, a stark contrast to the feelings of betrayal that had once filled my home. As the night of the gathering arrived, I felt a sense of excitement and nervousness. I had transformed my living space, decorating it with string lights and setting up a cozy seating area for conversations. I prepared a spread of snacks and drinks, eager to share my progress with those who had supported me along the way. When my friends arrived, the energy in the room was electric. We laughed, shared stories, and celebrated each other's accomplishments. I felt a sense of belonging that I hadn't experienced in years. It was liberating to be surrounded by people who appreciated me for who I was, not who I had been. As the night progressed, I caught sight of my phone, lighting up with a message. It was from my wife asking if we could talk. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to respond. "I'm busy tonight, but we can talk soon." I wanted her to understand that I was moving on, that my life was no longer intertwined with hers. I didn't want to drag her into my newfound happiness. I wanted her to see it from a distance, to realize the depth of what she had lost. A few days later, I received a message from her asking if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, curious about what she wanted to say. When we met, I could see the signs of regret etched on her face. She looked different, more vulnerable, and less confident than I remembered. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she said, her voice shaky. "I'm really sorry for what I did. I never meant to hurt you." I studied her, feeling a mix of emotions. "You did hurt me," I replied. "But I've moved on. I'm building a life for myself, and it feels good." Her expression changed, a flicker of realization passing through her eyes. "I can see that," she said quietly. "You look happy." "I am happy," I responded, my voice steady. "And I want you to know that I'm doing this for me, not to spite you, but to reclaim my life." The conversation was cathartic for me. I had finally confronted the source of my pain, but I wasn't looking for closure or reconciliation. I wanted her to understand that I was empowered by her betrayal, that I had turned my hurt into strength. As I left the coffee shop, a wave of satisfaction washed over me. I had shown her that I was capable of thriving without her, that I could build a life that was fulfilling and meaningful. I felt a sense of liberation, a release from the chains of my past. I was finally ready to embrace my future, to continue my journey of transformation, and to write the next chapter of my life, one that was filled with hope, resilience, and the promise of new beginnings. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself embracing the changes I had made in my life. The transformation wasn't just physical, it had seeped into every aspect of my being. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed. I was someone entirely new, forged in the fires of heartbreak and rebirth. I continued to write, pouring my experiences into stories that resonated with others. My blog gained traction, drawing in readers who found solace in my words. I received messages from people reaching out, sharing their own tales of betrayal and healing. It felt good to connect with others, to inspire them to reclaim their lives just as I had. I had also solidified my friendship with Lisa. Our bond deepened as we explored new places together, shared our passions, and supported each other's dreams. I found joy in her laughter and comfort in her presence. It was refreshing to be with someone who appreciated me for who I was, without the baggage of past relationships weighing us down. I felt a sense of excitement that I hadn't felt in years, a spark of hope that perhaps love could blossom again. One evening, while we sat on the balcony of my apartment, sipping wine and watching the sunset, I reflected on how far I had come. "You know," I said, turning to Lisa, "I never thought I'd be able to say this, but I'm grateful for what happened with my ex-wife." She raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Really? You mean the betrayal?" "Yeah," I replied, nodding. "It forced me to confront my own shortcomings and make changes I needed to make. I was stuck in a rut and I didn't even realize it until everything fell apart. Now I feel alive again." Lisa smiled, her eyes sparkling. "That's a powerful perspective. It takes a lot of strength to turn pain into growth." I could feel the warmth of her support wrapping around me, and I knew I had made the right choice in allowing myself to move forward. I had learned that life was about resilience, about picking up the pieces and forging ahead. Reflecting on my past relationship, I realized that I had grown in ways I never thought possible. I had learned to prioritize my own needs, to invest in my passions, and to surround myself with positive influences. I was no longer the man who had been defined by someone else's actions. I had reclaimed my identity, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. I had also come to terms with the lessons I had learned from my marriage. Trust was fragile, and love required effort from both partners. I understood that I had played a role in the deterioration of our relationship, but I refused to let that define my future. I was determined to approach my next relationship with honesty, openness, and a commitment to growth. As I stepped into this new chapter of my life, I felt empowered. I had transformed my pain into purpose, and I was excited about the possibilities that lay ahead. I was ready to write my own story, one that was filled with adventure, love, and the pursuit of happiness. In the end, I realized that betrayal didn't have to be the end. It could be a catalyst for change, a springboard for growth. I had emerged from the ashes of my past, stronger and more resilient than ever. I was ready to embrace the future, confident in the knowledge that I could overcome anything that life threw my way. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening breeze on my skin, and smiled. I was free. I was alive. And most importantly, I was ready for whatever came. Next, with that thought, I raised my glass to the sunset, to the journey I had taken, and to the bright future that awaited me. And as I did, I couldn't help but think of the words that had guided me through this transformation. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply living well. I was living well, and I intended to continue doing just that.